Hello, today I'm going to be looking at negatives, parentheses, and inputting equations into the GED calculator. The first thing to know is to do negatives. The button is right here, and when I hit that button, it puts a little symbol right there. Let's say I want to do -4. Now it's important to note that this symbol looks different than the subtract. When I hit the subtract button, it's going to be more in the middle and it's going to be longer. When I hit the negative button, it's up a little bit higher and it's shorter. So let's say I had -4 and I want to subtract a -5. That's what this will look like. When I hit enter, this answer might surprise you because when you subtract a negative, it's actually the same thing as adding, and so my answer would be 1. We can refer back to our positive and negatives lessons to understand that more fully, but that's what it looks like when you put it in the calculator. Subtract button is longer and more in the middle. Negative button is shorter and up at the top. The calculator will yell at you. If I did the same thing, I want to do -4, and if I tried to use the negative as a minus button and use the minus as a negative button, it will yell at you and say syntax error. Whenever you see that, it means you put something in wrong. So I would hit the clear button, and when you do that, it actually is blinking to let you know where the error was. And so I'm going to delete that. And I can insert some information right here. I'm actually going to go over to the 5 and I hit second insert, and I'm going to put that negative, and then I'm going to have this original problem that I wanted, which again my answer would be 1. Now I'm going to clear my screen out. The next thing I want to show you is how to use parentheses. These are right here, and parentheses will be one of your favorite things if you're entering in equations and putting the entire thing in to the calculator. So if you notice up here, I have an equation. I can put this entire thing into the calculator and hit enter, and it will do all of the math for you as long as you enter it in correctly. So to put this equation in, I'm going to hit an open parenthesis button, and then I'm going to do 3 minus, that is not a negative, -7, and then I have to close the parenthesis, and then this is a squared, so I'm going to hit the squared button right here. And if you notice, this is looking exactly like that. Now I need to add, and then a number right next to parenthesis means to multiply, and your calculator is smart enough to know that. So I can do 3 parenthesis 4, close that parenthesis. It's always important to make sure you close those parentheses so your calculator does not get messed up. But this is 3 times 4, and I'm telling my calculator 3 times 4. I don't need to put a multiplication symbol because your calculator does know a number next to a parenthesis means to multiply. Now I have a subtraction again. I need a square root, so that is this button. I do second square root, and I can fill this in. This is 2 times 32. And if you notice, it stayed under the square root sign, which I needed it to do. And then I can get out of that if I needed to add more, but that is the end of my equation. So now what I'm going to do, I can see my whole thing if I go back. If you notice, there's this arrow right here because the equation is longer than the screen. I can check to make sure the thing is correct. I don't have to go all the way back to the end. I can just hit enter, and it will tell me that my answer is 20. And that was the correct answer. So instead of having to do all of that math individually, doing this 3 minus 7 and the 3 times 4 and the 2 times 32, I can just put the entire thing in the calculator all at once. Now, something that is very important to know, and why it's important to use parentheses, and especially when you have negatives, is there's one thing that your calculator will not do correctly. So if you look at this right here, and I have -4 squared. Now, if you remember from your positive and negatives lesson that when you square a negative, the answer will be positive. But let's put this in my calculator. Let's do -4 squared, and I'm going to put it just how I have it written right there. The answer is going to be -16. And that is because the calculator did not square the negative, left the negative alone and just squared the 4. I know that -4 squared is positive 16, and the calculator got that wrong. So it's very important to know that I need to tell the calculator to square the negative. So how I'm going to do that is use my parentheses, and I'm going to do parenthesis -4. Then I'm going to close the parenthesis, and on the outside of it, I'm going to put the squared. Now this is telling the calculator, you're not just squaring the 4, I need you to also square the negative, and when you hit enter, you're going to get positive 16. And as we know, again, a negative times a negative is always a positive. So a -4 squared is -4 times -4, and that's going to be positive 16. So that's why I would liberally use parentheses as you're using your calculator, as long as you use them correctly, and you every time you open a parentheses, you close it, and that will make sure that your calculator doesn't accidentally only square your number and leave the negative hanging.